Hey guys, and welcome to The Broken Sword. So one of our last videos on History of the Ages was the lesser known heroes from The Lord of the Rings. We thought it was only fair to give the villains their share of the attention as well. There are many fantastic antagonists throughout Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings story, but not all of them have enough of a backstory to do their own video. So in this video, we will be covering the story of many of our favourite lesser known villains from The Lord of the Rings. Let's get into it.
Worthy of Mordor.
Now, sadly, Tolkien never really gave us a great amount of detail about the villains in his stories. We of course know a ton about the key figures, Morgoth, Sauron, Saruman, the Witch King, and a few others, but when it comes to the smaller villains, perhaps the ones that captain Sauron's armies during great battles, it's rare we even get a name, let alone a full backstory. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a complaint. It is more than forgivable when one man created so much that not every character is fully fleshed out with a rich history. A prime example of a character that on the surface you would think is important but doesn't even have a name is the Haradrim Chieftain at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. He led the Haradrim cavalry and Mumakil to Minas Tirith. He bore the symbol of the Black Serpent and was killed by King Theoden in battle. Though this honour was actually given to Eomer in the movies, as he throws a spear through the chest of the Haradrim Chieftain. Now the reason I'm saying this is just to give you an example of the little info we have on many of the smaller villainous characters in this story, no matter their rank or importance within Sauron's forces. However, there are a few that we do have a little information on, so let's start with the second in command at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, second only to the Witch King of Angmar, Gothmog. Not to be confused with Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs. He was the lieutenant of the Witch King, and following his master's fall at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, he called the reserve army out of Osgiliath and into the main battle. He brought Easterlings, Southrons, Variags and Trollmen into the fray. However, the most interesting thing about Gothmog is, despite his rank, we do not even know what race he is, as it's never actually specified. Many people have assumed he's an orc, as depicted within the movie adaptation, but many think that he may have been a Black Númenórean. Some even think he may have been another Nazgul. We will probably never know for sure, but one thing's for certain, he must have been an extremely experienced and formidable warrior to be second in command to the Witch King. Next we are going to talk about Grima Wormtongue. Grima lives in a little bit of a grey area when it comes to which side he is on. He is the chief advisor to King Theoden, but of course ends up being exposed as a spy for Saruman. However, he eventually goes on to ultimately kill Saruman. So, although I would consider him evil, it's hard to call him an out-and-out villain. Anyway, very little is known about Grima's early life, but what we do know is that he secretly became an agent of Saruman in order to help the wizard weaken the king and his kingdom. It's likely that Saruman had promised him Eowyn, the king's niece, as a reward for his services. In the novel, Wormtongue is actually accused of watching her under his lids and haunting her steps. And in the film, he makes clumsy romantic gestures to her as she weeps for her dead cousin Theodred. He also exiles Eowyn's brother Eomer and his army from Rohan, only saying that he sees too much after Eomer says, "Too long have you watched my sister, too long have you haunted her steps." It's also possible that he has Dunlin ancestry, since he is darker haired and physically smaller than the rest of the Rohirrim. After the War of the Ring, Grima then accompanied Saruman to the Shire, where the two sought revenge in petty tyranny over the hobbits, though Saruman had already been exerting control from afar by sending evil men to the Shire. During this time, Grima became increasingly degraded until he was a crawling wretch, a beggar, almost resembling Gollum, and Saruman shortened his nickname to Worm. Grima killed Lotho Sackville Baggins, and may have eaten him, which he claims to have done in the book under Saruman's orders. Spurred by the words of Frodo that he did not have to follow Saruman, and having been pushed over the edge when Saruman scorned him, Grima used a hidden knife to slit Saruman's throat, killing him. Obviously this is just in the book version. He then tried to make his escape, but was quickly killed by several arrows fired from the hobbits present, ending his short and unhappy life. Next we move on to Gobag. He was a crafty orc captain of Cirith Ungol during the Third Age. He was originally from Minas Morgul. After Shelob paralysed Frodo Baggins, two orc patrols led by Gobag and Shagrat came across his cocooned body, taking him back to Cirith Ungol where they planned to torture him. While shifting through Frodo's belongings, a dispute began between the two captains over Frodo's mithril vest, which escalated into a vicious fight all over the fortress between the Morgul and Cirith Ungol orcs. Gobag survived much of the fight, but was killed by Shagrat. Speaking of Shagrat, he was a large, dim-witted and arrogant Black Uruk. Captain of the Tower of Cirith Ungol, he commanded one of the 2 orc patrols that found Frodo. His initial story is identical to Gobag. After finding an unconscious Frodo, his Black Uruk Tower garrison fought over possession of Frodo's mithril shirt with Gobag's company. He was sent up the stair of Cirith Ungol to investigate matters. Shagrat interpreted his orders literally. All captives to be searched but left unharmed, and they and their possessions be taken to Barad-dûr. Gobag took Frodo's mail shirt for himself, and soon a fight over the shirt began. Gobag wounded Shagrat in the arm with a knife, but was eventually killed. Their respective followers began fighting also, and slaughtered each other over the next several hours. Later, Samwise Gamgee, now carrying the One Ring, infiltrated the Tower of Cirith Ungol and soon realised that the garrison was effectively wiped out. Shagrat, however, managed to get past him, carrying Frodo's armour and the other personal items, escaping and taking them to Barad-dûr as ordered. It is possible that Shagrat was actually killed by Sauron or his authorities at Barad-dûr for the events that occurred at the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Alternatively, he may have been rewarded for his loyalty by being allowed to march to the Black Gate alongside his fellow Orcs and Uruks as one of their captains. If so, it's unknown whether or not he was killed in the battle or the subsequent destruction of Mordor following Sauron's downfall, or if he just survived and fled. Next we have Ogluk. Ogluk and his company ambushed the Fellowship of the Ring at Amon Hen, succeeding in capturing 2 of the 4 hobbits, Meriadoc Brandybuck and Peregrine Took. In the book it's mentioned that he killed the big fighter, so in the book, Boromir's murderer is Ogluk. Under orders from Saruman, Ogluk's company set out towards Isengard. He stood by his Lord Saruman's demands when a band of orcs from Moria, led by Grishnak, tried to apprehend Merry and Pippin to take them to Mordor, as he beheaded Grishnak's follower to prevent Saruman's orders from being disobeyed. The hobbits were taken some ways further, but near the borders of Fangorn Forest. A band of Rohirrim led by Éomer attacked and routed the Uruk-hai. Ogluk was slain in single combat by Éomer himself during the fight. Finally then, we have the previously mentioned Grishnak. He was an orc captain of Mordor, who led the host of orcs that would join the Uruk-hai that had captured Merry and Pippin. Grishnak's plans for the 2 captives were in conflict with Ugluk's orders to deliver them unharmed. Grishnak wanted to take them to Mordor, but Ogluk refused his plan, so Grishnak slipped away while the orcs and Uruks argued amongst themselves. He soon returned with other orcs like himself. Grishnak was somehow aware of the existence of the One Ring, having been implied to have participated in the torture of Gollum, and he suspected that the 2 hobbits were possessing the ring. When the orcs holding the 2 hobbits were attacked by the banished Éomer's Rohirrim, Grishnak used the distraction to search the hobbits for the ring. Pippin tried to negotiate with Grishnak, asking for himself and Merry to be freed in exchange for information about the ring, but instead Grishnak tried to carry them away. When it seemed a Rohirrim rider had discovered him, Grishnak drew his sword to kill the hobbits lest they be rescued or escape. But before he could act, he was shot in the hand by a Rohirrim arrow and dropped his sword, at which point he tried to run but was ridden down and run through with a Rohirrim spear. Okay guys, that's it for our lesser known villains of The Lord of the Rings. Like I said at the start, most of these have little to no backstories, but I've shared pretty much all available information on them, and hopefully you enjoyed learning about these characters. How do you guys feel about the Lord of the Rings villains in general? With Sauron being the main antagonist, one that we never really see or have any physical interaction with through our heroes, it's a very different story to most others. Would you have preferred the books to feature a more prominent and involved bad guy? Or do you like the structure of the hidden enemy with lots of these smaller captains, if you will? Let us know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. Okay, time has come as always to thank our patrons. You guys are all incredible. An extra special shout out goes to the members of our highest tiers, Lorenzo, Nashith, Denver Steele, Gregory and Andrew. And finally we want to shout out our limited special tier on Patreon, Kevin, Abram, Michael, Matt and Glorfindel of Gondolin. As members of this tier, you get an executive producer role on our film and will be allowed to give feedback on the script itself. I think all of you have received it and maybe read it by now. The feedback that we've had so far has been incredible, so thank you so much. You are just making us even more excited. Also, before we go, a quick reminder to check out our other channels, The Sixth Ranger and History of Dragon Ball, for some nostalgic Power Rangers and anime lore. The links will be in the description if they are of any interest to you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Middle-earth content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.